The banging on my door at 4 a.m. made my heart stop. I threw open the curtains to see Karen standing there, with her usual scowl, waving papers and shouting, "You need to leave, I'm calling the police." My farm sat on acres of land my family had owned for generations. And yet, here she was, acting like she had the power of a judge. I grabbed my coat, already halfway awake, and muttered under my breath, "Not today, Karen." She shoved a thick envelope in my face, claiming it was an emergency notice from the HOA. Her fake urgency was dripping off her like syrup, but I had learned long ago not to be fooled by her theatrics. "Emergency?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "You mean, like the time you claimed my tractor was illegally parked?" Karen didn't answer. Instead, she stomped closer, waving her phone. "I've got the sheriff on the way. You're breaking the law." I stepped back, letting her momentum carry her toward the porch railing, and said, "Funny, I happen to know the real sheriff is tied up in a federal case prep right now." Her eyes flickered for a split second, but her act didn't falter. By now, my wife had appeared behind me, her hands on her hips. Karen froze just long enough for me to glance at the hidden camera I'd set up after last month's fake HOA visit. I smirked. This wasn't going to be her usual intimidation. "Do you really want to go on camera accusing me at 4 a.m., Karen?" I asked softly. She opened her mouth, but the words caught in her throat when I held up the footage tablet. Her face paled as the grainy security footage showed her stomping up my steps, waving papers, and yelling at me like she owned the place. I could see her plotting some excuse, but I wasn't giving her a chance. "This is my land," I said, letting the silence stretch. "And the only emergency here is your obsession with control." She backed off, muttering something about lawyers, but I could tell the gears in her head were spinning. She didn't leave quietly. Of course she didn't. But the tension had shifted. The first twist had landed. Karen came for a raid, but my farm and my proof were ready. I watched her stomp toward her car, imagining the call she'd make next. She had no idea that this morning would end with federal papers in her hands. The sun hadn't even risen, and already I knew this was just the beginning. By mid-morning, the quiet mountain farm felt tense, like the calm before a storm. I was checking the gates when my phone buzzed, an unknown number. I answered cautiously, and a firm voice said, "This is the U.S. Attorney's Office. We've received a complaint involving an HOA raid at your property. Can you confirm the details?" I froze for a moment, realizing Karen's emergency call had backfired faster than I could imagine. "Yes," I said slowly. "I have security footage and witnesses. Everything she claimed was false." The voice on the line scribbled notes, and I could almost hear their shock at hearing about a 4 a.m. ambush from a so-called HOA enforcer. Before I could hang up, Karen's car screeched down my long driveway. She jumped out, waving papers like a flag, shouting, "This is harassment. I demand justice." I leaned against my fence, letting her rant, while my wife quietly loaded the rest of the footage onto a backup tablet. "Looks like she's digging herself deeper," I whispered. Karen didn't notice me walking calmly toward her, my hand on the tablet. "You do realize," I said, holding it up, "that federal authorities are reviewing your actions right now." Her face went from smug to pale in seconds. That's ridiculous," she stammered, as if the word itself could erase the proof. Suddenly, the first real twist hit. Neighbors I hadn't told about the camera started appearing at the edge of my property, whispering and pointing at Karen's frantic behavior. One of them called out, "We saw everything! Stop harassing him!" Karen turned, realizing she was exposed to more than just me now. Her bravado cracked, and she muttered something about illegal recordings. But my wife stepped forward, holding her phone with the footage ready to send directly to the authorities. "All recorded legally," she said. "We know our rights. Do you?" Karen backed toward her car, shaking, but not before one last desperate shout, "I'll get you for this." I simply smiled, already knowing the next move would be in the hands of the federal court. The mountain farm had survived the first raid, and Karen's empire of fake power was starting to crumble. Even as the dust settled, I could feel it. The bigger twists weren't over. This morning had just opened the first chapter of a battle she would regret. By noon, the calm of the mountains returned, but my phone kept buzzing. Emails, calls, and texts from the federal office confirmed that Karen's emergency raid had triggered an official investigation. I leaned back on the porch, watching the sunlight glint off my farm, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation. Then, out of nowhere, Karen showed up again, this time with a lawyer trailing behind her like a shadow. She slammed the gate, pointed at me, and yelled, "I'm filing a restraining order. You can't threaten me." I raised an eyebrow, holding the tablet with the footage ready. "Threaten you? I think you mean documenting your trespassing and harassment?" Her lawyer tried to interject, waving a folder. "Sir, these are—" I cut him off calmly. "All legally recorded, all backed up, all witnessed. You're wasting your time." Karen's face twisted with rage, but she realized the room, or, in this case, the mountains, wasn't on her side. Then came the second twist. The local sheriff, who I had kept as a quiet ally, pulled up quietly in his truck. He nodded at me and said, "We've been watching this for weeks. You're in the clear. Let's make sure she knows that." Karen froze, her eyes darting from the sheriff to the tablet. Suddenly, her fake authority meant nothing. Neighbors started gathering again, curious about the commotion. One whispered, "She's always acting like she owns everyone's land." Another muttered, "Finally, someone's calling her out." I realized that public exposure was a weapon far stronger than legal papers alone. Karen's last-ditch effort came when she tried to rip the notice from my fence. I grabbed her wrist gently but firmly and said, "Everything you've done is documented. One wrong move and the federal authorities will be involved." She pulled back, her anger now tinged with fear. By mid-afternoon, Karen left in a huff, muttering threats while her lawyer trailed silently behind her. The sheriff gave me a small nod and a grin, hinting that the next move would be her court appearance, and that I was fully prepared for it. As I watched her drive away, I felt a surge of confidence. The morning's chaos had set the stage for the ultimate twist. Karen's power was cracking, and my family's mountain farm wasn't just surviving. It was about to expose her completely. Late that evening, just as the sun dipped behind the peaks, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was an official notification. Karen had been summoned to federal court for her multiple false reports and harassment. I showed the message to my wife, and we exchanged a quiet, victorious smile. "Looks like the morning drama finally caught up to her," I said. But the third twist hit faster than we expected. Karen, desperate to regain control, started a social media campaign painting herself as the victim. Her posts claimed I was intimidating her and breaking rules. Within hours, I could see the comments piling up, most siding with us. After I calmly posted the footage showing her 4 a.m. raid and harassment, the hypocrisy was glaring, and the public exposure began working in our favor. By nightfall, a reporter from a local paper had shown up, wanting to cover the story. "People are fascinated by what happened here," she said, setting up her camera near the edge of my property. I felt a strange mix of pride and tension. Our quiet mountain farm was suddenly the center of attention. But finally, Karen's lies were being challenged publicly. Unexpectedly, Karen tried one last move. She filed an emergency injunction, hoping to freeze the investigation. I chuckled softly when the sheriff sent me a text. "Good luck with that. They'll see through her claims in court." The law, coupled with evidence and witnesses, made her desperate tactics meaningless. As we watched the stars emerge, my wife leaned against me. "You know," she whispered, "this is going to end with her completely exposed." I nodded. And the best part, she brought all of this on herself. That night, the mountain air felt different, lighter, victorious. The twists weren't over, but one thing was certain. Karen's fake power had been shattered, and every move she made from here on out would be under the bright light of justice. The next morning, the tension returned, but this time, it was mixed with anticipation. I received a call from the federal court clerk confirming Karen's first hearing. She had no idea that every claim she made at 4 a.m. was documented and ready for court. I could practically hear her panic through the phone as the clerk outlined the procedures. As I prepared for the day, I noticed neighbors quietly gathering along the edge of my property again, this time offering support. One of them handed me a coffee and whispered, "We've got your back. She can't scare all of us." That simple gesture reminded me that public scrutiny was now a silent ally against her. When Karen arrived at the farm with her lawyer for last-minute evidence gathering, she found cameras rolling, neighbors watching, and the sheriff parked nearby. She tried her usual intimidation tactics, but this time, every move was recorded. I calmly approached, tablet in hand, and said, "Everything you did at 4 a.m. is logged. Any attempt to harass us further will go straight to the federal judge." Then came the next twist. Her lawyer, clearly uncomfortable, tried to intervene, whispering, "Sir, Maybe we should step back. Karen snapped at him, but the damage was done. Even he could see that the evidence and public attention were stacked against them. As she left the property, slamming her car door, I realized the pattern had changed. Karen was no longer the one controlling the story. She was reacting to it, and every desperate step she took only dug her deeper into legal trouble. That evening, as I locked up the barn and watched the sun set behind the mountains, I felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. The 4 a.m. raid had been her explosive start, but now the twists were piling on her, and my family's farm rights and reputation stood stronger than ever. By mid-afternoon, news from the federal court arrived. Karen's hearing had been scheduled for next week. Her panic was obvious in the emails she accidentally CC'd me on, her own lawyer warning her that the evidence was airtight. I couldn't help but smirk. The 4 a.m. raid had snowballed into a legal storm she couldn't control. Suddenly, another twist hit. One of my neighbors, a local journalist, uncovered that Karen had a history of filing false HOA complaints in other states. I read through the old reports, each more ridiculous than the last. "Looks like she's got a pattern," I told my wife. "We're not the first, and we won't be the last to see through her act." This revelation added a layer of power to our position. It wasn't just about our farm anymore. It was about exposing a serial abuser. Karen, in her frantic state, tried one more time to manipulate the situation. She sent certified letters to the property board, claiming I was intimidating her, and demanded a personal meeting. I calmly forwarded the letters to the federal authorities, highlighting her pattern of harassment. Her own documentation became evidence against her. Neighbors began stopping by more frequently, bringing food, support, and even small tokens for the cameras. Their quiet presence amplified the pressure on Karen. She was no longer the one in control. Every action she took became a public display of desperation. That night, as I sat on the porch watching the stars, I realized the bigger twist. Karen's obsession with power had set her up for her own downfall. The raid that started at 4 a.m. was just the opening move in a chain of events that would end with her completely exposed and our family standing strong, unshaken, and ready for whatever came next. Early the next morning, I received a call from the federal court, confirming that Karen's lawyer had requested a delay, claiming personal emergencies. I couldn't help but chuckle. After all the drama she caused at 4 a.m., now she was scrambling to buy time. The court wasn't fooled, and neither was I. Then came an unexpected twist. The federal judge assigned a mediator to review her past HOA complaints. Within minutes, it became clear that Karen had a long history of filing baseless claims and harassing neighbors. The mediator even called one of my neighbors for a statement, and they calmly confirmed everything from the early morning raid to her fake emergency claims. I watched the process unfold, realizing that the walls were closing in on her. Karen's desperation escalated. She showed up at my property again, this time pacing outside the fence, shouting about rights and illegal recordings. I stayed inside, keeping the cameras rolling. My wife peeked from behind the curtains and whispered, "She doesn't even realize she's making herself look worse." I nodded. Every frantic move she made was another piece of evidence stacking against her. By late afternoon, her lawyer called to warn her that federal authorities were considering additional charges for harassment and false reporting. I overheard Karen muttering, "I can't believe this. This isn't fair." I smiled to myself. Justice was unfolding naturally without me lifting a finger beyond protecting my property and documenting everything. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, I finally felt the tension ease slightly. The 4 a.m. raid had ignited a firestorm that Karen couldn't control, and every twist, every desperate move had only sealed her fate further. Our farm was safe, the evidence was irrefutable, and the countdown to her ultimate exposure had officially begun. The following morning, I woke to a flurry of notifications. The federal court had issued a temporary restraining order against Karen, preventing her from coming anywhere near my property. I read it aloud to my wife. "Looks like the law finally agrees with us." She smiled, but we both knew the battle wasn't fully over. Then the next twist hit. Karen attempted to rally support online, posting dramatic videos claiming she was being silenced and attacked by neighbors. She even tried to fabricate witness statements, but the truth was stronger. I uploaded a short, clear compilation of her 4 a.m. raid, her shouting, and her threats, which quickly went viral in the local community. Comments poured in, siding overwhelmingly with us. Her own lies were backfiring spectacularly. By afternoon, federal investigators called to confirm details. They requested all footage, witness statements, and previous HOA complaints. I calmly handed everything over, knowing this was the moment her repeated harassment would be officially documented. Karen's desperation had built the case against her, without us needing to exaggerate a single fact. That evening, I saw her driving slowly past my farm again, glaring, but keeping her distance because of the restraining order. I watched from the porch, feeling a strange satisfaction. The person who tried to dominate and intimidate me at 4 a.m. was now powerless, carefully navigating the edge of the law she had tried to manipulate. The mountain air felt lighter than ever. Karen's power was gone, and every twist, every frantic move she made, had only ensured her own exposure. Our family, our land, and our peace were intact, and the final chapter of this saga in federal court was about to write itself.